This tutorial will be covering the self-service provisioning flow within Descope. The self-service SAML provisioning flow allows you to let your customers configure their SAML configuration by themselves. Before implementing this flow, we need to make sure that we've checked off the prerequisites. We need to have SSO enabled and come in, go to Authentication Methods, SSO, Service Provider, and ensure it's enabled. We need to have a tenant created. I've created descope.onmicrosoft.com. And then we also need to have a user associated to that tenant with the existing SSO admin permission. So if we look at the tenant admin permission, it has SSO admin. I've created a user that has this tenant associated as well as the tenant admin role. Before we embed the flow, let's take a look at it and see what it does. It loads the SAML configuration and then steps the user through configuring the SAML integration. So here the user can enter their company domain, then they can select whether they'd like to use like Azure or Google or Okta or just generic SAML 2.0. After it hits these items, it's going to take you to a screen that's specific to the configuration you'd like to perform. Then it will allow you to save the configuration and it will give you a done screen. Let's now review embedding the flow within your application. Here we have an SSO setup page within our React sample app. This app is available on GitHub if you would like to clone it and play with it. So here we basically copy the code from the knowledge base article into our application. So here we're basically checking if the user's authenticated, if it's an SSO admin, and if it is an SSO admin, we're displaying the SAML config flow. Let's now step through the flow. Within the sample app, it's embedded underneath the SSO setup. And again, this will only be displayed if the user is a tenant admin or has a different role that includes the SSO admin permission. We can update our company domain. We can then see the different IDP instructions. So we're going to use Azure AD today. Upon clicking Azure AD, we'll see the instructions. I'm going to zoom in a little on the instructions so I can use two panes here. Here we're going to log into the Azure AD portal and create an enterprise application. I've already gone through this first step and clicked New Application. Now we're going to create our own application. So I'm going to create a name of this application and select Integrate any other application you don't find in the gallery. We'll then click Create. Once the application has been created, we're going to click on Single Sign-On. Then we'll click on SAML, click Edit. As you step through the flow with the instructions, you'll see the different details here are being populated from the tenant itself. So instead of copying these manually, the flow is automatically picking them up and displaying them to you for easier access. So now we'll copy in the entity ID as the identifier. And then we'll scroll down. We'll copy the reply URL, copy that in, and then we're going to click Save. We can then assign users and groups within Azure AD. Go to Users and Groups, assign users and groups. We'll click on this, and on the next page, we'll select the users and groups we want to assign. Here I've selected the users and groups that I want to assign to the application. I'll click Assign. And now we have the users and groups assigned. We'll then go back to single sign-on. We'll go to SAML certificates, download the base64, open the base64 certificate, copy the entire certificate, including the beginning and end certificate, paste it within the flow, then find the login URL, copy to clipboard, paste, and then the Azure identifier, copy and paste, next. Let's zoom back out here. We've now completed this successfully. If we now go back to the console, within the tenant, you can see that all of the details we just configured within the flow are now within the tenant. We can now test signing in with SSO. We can take the user's email address. We're then taken to the Microsoft login page. Say no. We're now logged in as this user. So as you can see, we have Chris at Descope on Microsoft.com. And over here, we now have this user created, and it's associated to this tenant. To recap this tutorial, we covered the self-service provisioning flow. We implemented it within a React application and stepped through the flow using Azure Active Directory.